What stands out in my mind? The dangerousness. For the first time in my life, I got the real feeling that other people were willing to kill me for their beliefs.
I don't like to think about this much. I guess I haven't because I get so emotional about it.
It took me a very, very long time to process for myself what happened there and to deal emotionally with what happened there.
I had never experienced that kind of hate before for just who I am.
The thing that surprised everyone so much about City Council is that the whole time, all the way up until at least the day before and even up until that evening, we all were counting on winning. We had the votes, we had done the work, we did all the right things, we made all the right moves. Going back as far as a couple years prior to that, we had been very active in the political process. We had worked for different candidates for City Council. We raised money, we leafleted, we went door to door. We did all of the things that one is supposed to do in the United States, that is to give citizens their rights, the different ways and methods to influence your legislators. It wasn't until that day that we started to see cracks developing, and of course it was a roller coaster ride down from there on out.
Usually covering City Council can be very, very boring, and there are very few times that I recall something as heated and as emotional as the gay rights ordinance. When it first came down, it went through a first reading, as all ordinances go through, and usually no reporter pays much attention to the first reading. But I saw it, and I realized that it was going to be a pretty hot topic, so I decided to do something even though it just had the first reading. And I interviewed Craig Covey, and we just ran it as a very short piece. This is what's going on in council. Little did I know at the time how heated it was going to get.
I went to this City Council meeting originally as a student, as a sociology student. I was taking a course in research and needed something to research, and this thing seemed like a fun thing to research at the time. And I remember getting down to City Hall about an hour before the meeting was supposed to start, and at the doorway, as I was going into the room, somebody from Stonewall Union handed me a pink triangle and asked me if I would put it on to show support for the ordinance. And I was there trying to be objective, an objective researcher, but found that I had to make a decision one way or another. It was very hard to be in the room and not take a stand one way or another. So I put on the pink triangle and marched into the room and squeezed in with the group of people who were all there in support of the ordinance.
I was standing at the door handing out pink triangles with Carl, and this woman came up and she said, "What are they?" And I said, "It's a pink triangle, and it symbolizes one's belief that in the civil rights of gay people." And she said, "Well, I don't believe in that. Where did it come from?" And I said, "Well, it came from when gay people were incinerated by the Nazis in Germany during the Holocaust." And she said, "Well, I think somebody like you should be incinerated." You know, that's it's a little hard to deal with.
I went there that day with the hope that we'd have maybe 50 to 100 of our folks show up in support of the legislation. I was amazed because the crowd turned out to be about 50-50. It was really neat. I saw folks there that you never dreamed would have ever shown up at that event. It was so public.
I had nothing to do with the events that led up to the legislative vote at City Council. Up until that time, I had always been apathetic almost about the cause of gay rights. My partner had, for 4 years, tried to involve me in various activities of Stonewall Union and different functions of politics in general, and I'd always shrugged it off as not having the time or always had some excuse for not getting involved. And the day of the vote, I decided to take off work early, and I was the first one there actually, and it was kind of interesting just sitting around waiting for to see who was going to show up.
I'm an exchange visitor to the States from London, England, and I went to City Council on that day because I was invited by some people I was staying with, and it seemed a good opportunity to see city politics in action in America.
And somehow you sort of believe that in America, where we were talking to a city council, people elected by me and by you, I'm a taxpayer, that we would get a reasoned hearing. We asked people who were in the civil rights movement and who were knowledgeable in this area to speak.
President Hammond, City Council. My name is Gary Whitty. I live on Bryden Road here in Columbus, Ohio. I'm an ordained pastor of the United Methodist Church. I come before you today to share my concern and add my support to this important legislation which you are deliberating. Although I come in my clerical uniform, I maintain that the proposed amendment is first and foremost a civil issue of human rights.
The ACLU of Central Ohio is strongly in favor of adoption of the ordinance that you have before you. Equal treatment and equal protection under the laws for all citizens is a worthy goal, and it is what this ordinance reaches toward.
The Episcopal Church, indeed most of the major mainline denominations in the United States, Roman Catholic, Presbyterian, Methodist, and on, all agree that sexual orientation is not a proper criterion for employment, and indeed that to employ such a criterion is wrong and is a denial of the very basic God-given human rights that hopefully each of us might enjoy.
When people started to give their testimony, I was quite, at first, interested and was just listening to what people were saying, but it became very quickly apparent that there were a lot of other things going on in the audience that were really distracting. There was a TV crew there and the camera was roaming up and down the aisles, so the whole issue being one of confidentiality, whether or not gay people should be able to speak out as to who they are. It seemed very incongruous that a TV camera was deliberately playing over the faces of those people. The other thing that was happening was that there was a lot of noise from certain religious groups, and they were fairly disruptive while the testimony was going on in the first case.
Outside of the Bible, the studies show that, like it or not, 10% of the population is going to be gay. And they are going to struggle with this. Now, this is not a choice of theirs. Many of these people are very religious. Many gays are very religious. They grow up, they are Jews, they are Baptists, they're Mormons, they're Catholics, and they want to follow the tenets of their religion. But they discover they're homosexuals and they can't do anything about it. So they try prayer and they're still homosexuals. They try psychiatry and they're still homosexuals. And then they start thinking about suicide because they do not know what to do. And when they try repenting, they repent and they try celibacy for as long as that can possibly go on, and they live lives of misery. When they go to employment, the attitudes that you are hearing in this audience get them fired. My phone rings with people who have been fired and there is no protection.
They could tolerate even gay males speaking, which is, Biggie's sin, as opposed to females, straight speaking. Ministers, they were kind of quiet on. They really, I got the feeling they didn't consider them ministers. They considered them fakes. But when the women got up, the tone changed. It became more threatening. And then when a gay female got up, I know that Rhonda is a person who takes charge and can give an order and present facts and so on. And that was very threatening. And that's when I became concerned for her safety.
I actually am here in two persons tonight. My name is Rhonda Rivera. I live at 385 East Schreier. My profession is attorney and legal scholar. I cannot remember, although I'm a relatively well-known public speaker, when I have felt so deeply and cared so much, so you will excuse me. Over 54 cities in this nation already have this legislation. It's not that wild. One state has voted to protect gay people all over with regard to their employment rights. We have 4 executive orders in states around this country.
Another thing that I was really struck by was the testimony that was given by Robert Rivera, who is an 18-year-old young man, the son of Rhonda Rivera. And he didn't have a lot to say. It wasn't the content of what he said, it was the emotion.
I would like to introduce to you my son, who is 17 years old and is about to graduate from a Columbus public school. He's going to finish my time.
My name is Robert Rivera. I go to Columbus Alternative High School. And I guess one of the things that I'm really pleased with about Columbus is that I can go to a school where I feel happy. Columbus Alternative is a place where people can go when they don't feel quite right with the Columbus public school system as it stands now. People feel ostracized in schools, and ostracism is a tough thing to deal with. It makes people hurt. I've watched my mom for 17 years. This hurts. What I'd like to say to you tonight is that we're all opening our hearts to you, and we're putting them on a silver platter so that you have two choices. You can cut it, or you can love it. That's all I can say.
The last speech for our side was given by Craig Covey, the executive director of Stonewall Union. And at the end of his speech, he made a very moving statement that if anybody in the room had ever been discriminated against, fired, or anything because they were gay, to stand up. And every gay person in the audience stood up, and it made a big statement, but apparently not big enough statement.
Is there discrimination in this city? If there is anyone in this room who has ever been fired or denied work because they are gay, if there's anyone here in this room who has ever been in fear of being gay, if there's anyone in this room who has ever suffered abuse or discrimination because they are gay, if you believe that the time is now to end this waste of people, would you silently stand up? As voters, as workers, as citizens, as decent, hardworking Americans in this city, as people, we ask you to vote yes.
When the opponents of the ordinance get up to speak with all their fire and brimstone, and some of them got very graphic and had to be silenced by Jerry Hammond, president of council. I think he was president at the time. My skin started to crawl because I felt the people you're talking about are in this room right now and they're listening to you. And how can you be so cruel as to say those things? And then I thought, what must be going through the minds of the people in favor of the ordinance?
I was just amazed at the rudeness and the callousness of many of the people that, as they spoke, claimed to be real Christians, and that their God had told them to do this and to do that.
I got terrified because I realized that the only way they could be there and say the incredibly hateful things they were saying was to completely disallow that we were human.
Men and women are made by their Creator. Blacks are made by their Creator. Whites are made by their Creator. Homosexuals are not made.
Homosexuality is just what God said it is. It's an unclean, unsanitary practice. When men in medical terms put their penis in another man's anus and put it in their mouth, they create disease. And that's just it. That's just plain, simple language. You cannot, excuse the term, eat shit and not get sick.
The sheer hatred that he spoke with was really frightening. What was more frightening was that this would be a person who normally would stand on a street corner and receive very little attention, but he was being applauded by fairly respectable-looking people who normally I would have thought would have just walked past and not given a second glance.
It's foolishness! It's foolishness! You don't let a leper person in among clean people. You quarantine them. You keep them outside. You quarantine smallpox and herpes, AIDS, and these various diseases that have stemmed out of the homosexual community should not be forced to be placed among God's clean people.
I think the people who angered me the most, who hurt me the most, were the other blacks in the room. When they said that they were against the queers and the homosexuals and the perverts, that they sort of erased the fact that I was black and said that I could just be punished.
I am not an attorney, but I am familiar with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII. I am aware of the fact that discrimination is against the law in terms of race, religion, national origin, sex, etc. Sexual orientation is not included. With the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, this country was stronger. This country was stronger because it made it offered free access to those individuals to public accommodations, housing, and employment. Those individuals have contributed, and the country is stronger, the cities are stronger. Can we say the same thing if such an act was passed and included sexual orientation? I would say no.
And I thought how blind of these people, and how wrong of them to show their children, because there were so many young black children there, and I thought how wrong of them to show their children that you can take away somebody's color by believing that they're a sinner. And you can take away people's rights.
I didn't see little children, but I saw, I think I remember 6, 7, on up to about 13. It was amazing, the pre-adolescents there. And the thing that really struck me was bringing their children to the one place where they never wanted their children to be exposed to these people. You know, the whole thing is that gay people recruit and convert, and if you let them see them, oh gee, that'll do it. And so here they are saying, we don't want these people around our children.
The attack is aimed at my children. If my children are attacked, I am attacked, and I must take due recourse to that attack. That's right. How are my children attacked? 2 ways that I see. First, by the effect of government stamp of approval on homosexuality. A young mind will think that homosexuality is okay because its city government has said so. The second attack on my children will be even more direct and more powerful. It will come in the form of a homosexual teacher. Not that I am saying that a homosexual teacher will try to seduce my children, and yet I do believe that's true. But aside from that issue, think of the effect of a homosexual teacher on a student.
We believe if passed, this bill will allow homosexual, lesbian teachers in our school and will create a hysteria-type atmosphere among the parents whose children may have to shower in front of a known homosexual and go to the bathroom in front of a known homosexual or lesbian, and we don't want it. We also know that homosexuals cannot reproduce. They must recruit, and the best place to recruit is going to be the daycare and the public school system.
And it interested me that those speaking in opposition kept talking about the city of Columbus will become known as the San Francisco of the Midwest, and what kind of image is this for the city. And in reality, I wanted to say something very similar to that the city of Columbus was going to stand for human rights in this area. And the people speaking in opposition seem to think it's all so easy. If they could just get rid of the gays, Columbus would be a better place.
Columbus does not need to become the San Francisco of the Mideastern America. And I vote to encourage the limiting of San Francisco syndrome to the West Coast by rejecting the city ordinance.
Gay rights legislation would have a detrimental effect on Columbus. I do not believe the proponents of this legislation have seriously considered what those effects may be. Historically, the increase of homosexuality has been found among the evidences of moral decay and social disintegration. We in Columbus would do well to promote those values and ideals which would strengthen our city rather than weaken it.
After all of the testimony had been given, Maury Portman, who is a Jewish man, made the comment that he made about it was a totally ignorant comment, which reflected his lack of knowledge about gay men and lesbians being involved in the Holocaust, being victims of the Holocaust.
Mr. President? Yes, Mr. Portman. I feel there's a statement that I have to make. I resent the equation of Nazism with this issue. Just to make a historical point, Adolf Hitler's closest buddies were homosexuals.
I'm appalled by the statement that Mr. Portman has made to the City Council. As a member of City Council, he is a leader of the city. He has assumed the role of a civic leader within our community. And yet, I'm offended. I'm offended as a human being. I'm offended as a professor of history. I'm offended as a gay man. The Nazis put to death 9 million people. 6 million Jews, 1 million gypsies, and 600,000 gay men and lesbian women. The Nazis, the rulers of the Third Reich, under the orders of Hitler, had the SS brutally murder homosexual Nazis, just as they brutally murdered 600,000 of my brothers and my sisters.
One of the turning points in the evening when I realized it was very serious was when the 5 speakers on either side had spoken, and they started their meeting, and everyone stood up to say the Pledge of Allegiance and sing the Star-Spangled Banner. And we stood up, and we didn't speak, and we didn't sing. And we just stood there in silence, and when it was over, the 2 ministers against the wall, and one was black and one was white, and I can't remember who spoke to who first, said, what, they're not even patriotic? What, if if you're queer, you're not American? What's the scoop? They don't even love their country. And the black man had said one of those comments, and when they finished that interchange, I turned to him and I said, I haven't sung the Star-Spangled Banner since I learned the National Black Anthem. And I won't sing the Star-Spangled Banner until there are rights for all. Don't you remember civil rights? Don't you care? And for a moment, and maybe it was my hope, but the black minister, I felt like there was just a glimmer of doubt in his eyes about what was going on there. And then he clouded over and he got very serious again about the business of taking away our rights.
And most of all, when we were saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and as we were saying one nation under God, the anti-legislation people yelled out, under God, and we all yelled back, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And it amazed me that they took that under God for their own again. It was one of those, that God's on their side, and they speak daily with him, and he tells them to hate people that are different.
There was a minister who said the prayer, the opening prayer for the city council meeting. And in his prayer, he was very clear about what his opinion was, about what he had just witnessed. It was very clear whose side he was on, and he made some remark about forgive these sinners who are in our midst and help us make the right decision here.
If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. We unashamedly this evening turn to thee, the ruler over all things visible and invisible, for needed wisdom and courage, being assured that as we place thee and thy commandments first in our thinking, we shall be richly blessed as a community. Hear us, blessed Lord, as we pray in our Redeemer's name. Amen.
As the vote started, that's when I knew that we weren't gonna get the ordinance passed.
It is in my committee. I would move for the passage of 832-84. Is there a second? Clerk, call the roll by voice.
Espy.
For the reasons I stated, I'm voting no.
Please now.
Maloney.
Everyone has had an opportunity. Allow the council members to vote.
Mr. Maloney.
I believe that there is a constitutional question involved here, and I vote yes.
Mr. Mantle.
No.
Yeah. Mr. Portman.
No.
Biggest blow of all I recall vividly was when Arlene Shoemaker cast her no vote. And she was one of the first politicians that we went to, one of the first council members, and said, this is what we're going to do. And she sat there. She said, of course you have my vote, Craig. She looked me right in the eyes and said, of course. I believe in your cause. I will vote yes. And I'll never forget the moment sitting in that packed city council hall where it was about 90 degrees and people were all over the place just yelling and screaming. And the vote got around to her. And she said, I have to take a minute to explain my vote. And at that point, we knew what was going to happen.
Shoemaker.
I'd like to take a minute and explain my vote. I also believe very strongly in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And I also believe when I took my oath of office that I swore to represent all the people of Columbus. I cannot vote the way I'd like to vote, so I'm going to say no, because I believe we do not have a clear-cut piece of legislation that will cause anything but unhappiness.
Teeter.
No.
Mr. Hammond.
Well, it's obviously obvious that as the person who brought the legislation in, I strongly believe that there is no support for discrimination. I will vote yes. The legislation fails, however.
After the vote had been taken, and I felt like everything just exploded, and everybody took off the pink triangles that we were wearing, and we all laid them on the table in front of City Council. And it struck me suddenly what an appropriate symbol that was for everyone to be wearing that day, the symbol of gays being in Nazi concentration camps.
I cried that night when we lost the vote, and I had 3 or 4 people who literally helped get me out of there quickly. I didn't really necessarily want to be seen crying all over television, but I was just so hurt.
And after the city council, I ran out. I didn't stop and talk to anybody. I was just so upset.
But just the fact that our community showed up with such civility and such determination and such pride, facing all that filth and the vulgar and the screaming and the yelling and the denigration, and we came out of there with our heads up very high.
We held a candlelight vigil that night after the ordinance failed, and it was good to see so many people there. It was showed that we hadn't given up. We were still cohesive, and we were still going to work, and we were still going to fight. We're going back to council. We're not going to give up.
When the issue comes up again, because it will, I'll be there.
And we'll not only be back this year, but this time we're going to win.
Yeah, I'm ready for next time.
I won't quit. None of us will quit.
And we will keep fighting until we get what we deserve.
If there is anyone in this room who has ever been fired or denied work because they are gay, if there's anyone here in this room who has ever been in fear of being gay, If there's ever anyone in this room who has ever suffered abuse or discrimination because they are gay, if you believe that the time is now to end this waste of people, would you silently stand up?
Against the ones who would demean us. Where there is love between us, we will shine bright as the sun, and they will know we're one. Where there is love between us, we can stand, linking our arms against the ones who would demean us. Where there is love between us, we will shine bright as the sun, and they will know we're one. Where there is love between us, we will shine bright as the sun, and they will know